Ladies and gentlemen, wishing you a peaceful night full of rest and relaxation tonight. We're diving into a moment of divine drama, so subtle you'll barely hear it as it unfolds. Yes, we're talking about Hera, Queen of the Gods, and her very quiet yet legendary tantrum in the heavens. Picture it, a celestial family dinner, the kind of event where even the gods manage to get on each other's nerves. You're surrounded by divine beings floating through the glittering clouds of Mount Olympus, each one with their own eccentricities, tempers, and motivations. And then there's Hera. Ever the epitome of elegance, her rage is the kind of refined storm that doesn't scream, it whispers. But what happens when Hera, after centuries of tolerating Zeus's antics, finally decides enough is enough? When the thunderbolts aren't the answer, and instead a silent fury is unleashed in the most understated way possible. You probably won't survive this, or at least it would be quite the dramatic scene to witness, especially considering how Hera handles things. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you watching from, by the way? Share your location and the local time in the comments below. Let's see how far these stories reach. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. We begin in the clouds, the kind of clouds you'd find around Mount Olympus, so thick they nearly pulse with divine energy. Below you, an endless stretch of verdant land seems to ripple under the golden light of the gods. And just ahead, the great marble halls of Olympus, vast, opulent, and filled with the soft hum of celestial chatter. Inside one of the grand chambers, you find yourself surrounded by an assortment of divine beings gathered around a massive, polished stone table. There's the ever-flamboyant Zeus, lounging at the head, his thunderbolt casually resting by his side like an overfed pet. His charm is as large as the thunderclouds he controls, but his personality is, let's say, a little more prone to distractions. And then there's Hera, sitting silently beside him. Hera, the goddess of marriage and family, with her radiant beauty and regal poise, seems so serene, you might think she's merely watching the clouds drift by. But of course, that wouldn't be the full story. Not when you know Hera as well as the gods do. Beneath that composed exterior lies a simmering but meticulously controlled anger. She's the kind of person who holds her silence until it's too late to fix things, an ancient master of the silent treatment. And tonight, her fury is about to unfold in a most unexpected way. Zeus, as usual, is oblivious to the growing tension. He's preoccupied with a fresh scandal, a tale involving a swan, a mortal princess, and an all-too-familiar pattern of mischief. Just another of his flings, nothing too alarming until Hera, for once, doesn't make a scene. She merely sits there, her gaze fixed in the distance, as if contemplating the clouds themselves, her lips pressed into a perfectly controlled line. But you sense it, the tension in the air. You know how it is when someone is silently fuming. They don't need to raise their voice. You can feel it in the way the air gets heavier, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Hera is angry, and she's not about to let Zeus know just yet. Historians still argue whether this temper was always a part of Hera's nature, or if Zeus's constant indiscretions truly pushed her to this point. Either way, you can't help but admire how she's able to channel her frustration into this flawless silence. It's a power move you'd expect from the Queen of the Gods, controlled, deliberate, and in many ways even more terrifying than a dramatic outburst. The dinner continues, but Hera's presence has shifted the mood. The laughter and chatter of the other gods seem somehow quieter now. Even the grand goblets of ambrosia, the nectar of the gods, taste a little less sweet. Zeus, the ever-confident leader, doesn't notice the change, not yet anyway. He goes on talking about his latest exploits, reveling in the attention of his fellow gods and goddesses. And yet his eyes keep darting to Hera, sensing that something is wrong but unsure what. Remember that time Hera got mad at him over the golden apple, or when she punished a mortal simply for being too beautiful? These were more obvious moments. This is different. Hera isn't rushing to banish anyone or curse any mortals. Instead, she's just quiet, and that's where her true power lies. You get the feeling she's waiting for the right moment to unleash her strategy. A strategy that you'll soon discover has nothing to do with loud, divine displays of power. It's almost as if the silence itself is her weapon, and it's working because even the gods are beginning to notice. The atmosphere in the room is thick, but still the gods try to keep their composure. Zeus, ever the optimist, is oblivious to the subtle shift in energy. His usual laughter fills the air as he continues to regale tales of his latest exploits, his endless list of amorous adventures, each one more ridiculous than the last. But Hera remains motionless, her silence now an imposing presence far more threatening than any outburst could be. You can almost feel the weight of Hera's stare even though she says nothing. It's as if her gaze alone can silence the gods, turning the once bustling hall into a tomb of quiet unease. Even the courtiers, mortal and immortal alike, who normally wouldn't bat an eye at a squabble between gods, now find themselves faltering in her presence. You might think that Zeus, being the king of the gods, would notice the tension. But no, he's too wrapped up in his own ego, too used to being adored. If Hera's glare was an actual weapon, he would be on the floor already, but he doesn't quite get the message. His world, after all, has always revolved around him. But that's precisely what Hera is waiting for him to continue underestimating her. Hera, despite her beauty and status, has never been the loudest voice in the room. She's never the one who shouts the loudest to get attention. No, Hera's strength lies in her restraint, her quiet power, and tonight her silence speaks volumes. Historians have debated Hera's demeanor for centuries. Was she always the silent, calculating goddess, or did Zeus's endless infidelities force her to develop a more passive form of retaliation? Some argue that Hera's temper was a result of her tumultuous marriage, one that started with the promise of love, but quickly devolved into jealousy and betrayal. And who could blame her? But there's another theory, one that suggests Hera's silence was not born out of frustration, but out of strategy, a way to assert her control in a world where men, even gods, often took center stage. The gods, now aware that something is wrong, start to murmur among themselves. They exchange glances, raising an eyebrow here, stealing a look there. None of them dare speak directly to Hera. They don't want to make it worse. Meanwhile, Hera's mind races. She's had enough of the antics of the endless drama that Zeus drags her into. He's never satisfied with just one lover, always seeking another, even when it threatens her dignity. And this time Hera is going to handle things her way. She won't shout. She won't storm off. Instead, she will sit in her silence, and the gods will come to her. They'll be the ones begging for her attention. It's brilliant, really quiet, controlled, and all the more dangerous because no one knows how to react to it. Zeus, trying to keep the mood light, takes another sip of his ambrosia. He's far too comfortable, far too confident in his usual tactics. He flashes a charming smile at Hera, but she doesn't return it. Instead, Her eyes remain fixed, distant cold. A slight tension in her jaw betrays the storm brewing within. It's as if she's slowly becoming a volcano, but one that doesn't erupt with fire and ash. Instead, it erupts with a carefully calculated move that will shake Olympus to its core. The room remains silent for a long moment, and finally Zeus's voice falters. He looks around confused by the change in the air. The laughter has stopped, the clinking of goblets ceases, and even the faint rustling of the attendants falls away. The gods are beginning to realize that something is deeply amiss. Hera has withdrawn, and in her absence the room seems emptier, quieter, more vulnerable than it ever has been before. It's at this point that Hera stands a subtle movement, but one that demands attention. The air shifts slightly as she rises from her seat, her elegant gown flowing around her like the mist. She does not raise her voice, no. Hera does not need to shout. Instead, she takes a single graceful step toward the door, and just like that, she exits. This, you realize, is her act of rebellion. She has removed herself from the equation. The dinner of the gods and the entire affair have now been rendered irrelevant because Hera has chosen not to engage. She's chosen silence, and in the silence a quiet power is growing. Zeus, now staring after her, has no idea what to do. He's been too accustomed to ruling through force, through power, through spectacle. But this is something else entirely. Hera has shown him that power doesn't always come with a loud bang. Sometimes it comes with the absence of sound, with the quiet leaving behind a void too large to fill. Historians still argue about whether Hera's silence was a calculated tactic or a reaction to an emotional wound. Was this an act of diplomacy, or was it the very first step in a more personal and destructive war? What we do know is that it shook the very foundations of Mount Olympus. For now, the gods can only wait and wonder, what will Hera do next? Zeus stares blankly at the empty space where Hera once sat, his golden eyes now wide with uncertainty. He shifts uncomfortably, his once confident demeanor faltering. The gods around him exchange nervous glances, clearly unsure of how to proceed. No one speaks, not even Apollo, who usually has something to say about everything. The chamber feels hollow, the chatter from moments ago now a distant echo. Zeus takes a deep breath, trying to mask his unease with a forced chuckle, but it's hollow. It doesn't land. His usual charm, the very thing that made him the most adored and feared god of Olympus, seems to slip away as he ponders Hera's absence. His voice cracks slightly as he calls after her, but there is no response. Not even a flutter of wings, no celestial rustling of the fabric of the heavens. Just silence. The other gods seem torn between following Hera's example or placating Zeus, the king of Olympus. Some look toward him, waiting for a sign. Ares shifts uncomfortably, and even Aphrodite's usual self-assured smile falters as she carefully adjusts her position, suddenly aware that the atmosphere has changed. But no one moves to chase after Hera. She's already gone, and there's a strange power in her exit. For the first time in centuries, it's Zeus who seems powerless, uncertain of how to reclaim control. You might find yourself wondering what exactly Zeus sees when he looks into the distance past the marble walls to the clouds. Does he truly understand what's happening? The gods have long revered him for his strength, his might, his thunderbolts. But Hera has just shown him something he's never had to reckon with: quiet strength. His entire life he's been surrounded by worshippers, followers, and sycophants. He's had followers, yes, but not equals. And Hera, for all her faults, is his equal. She is the one god who doesn't need him, And she's showing it now in the most chillingly composed way possible. Historians still argue over whether Zeus ever fully understood Hera's role in his life. Did he respect her, or did he simply expect her to stand by him, no matter how often he tested her patience? One thing is clear, though, he never thought he'd have to contend with a Hera who could quite simply disappear. As Zeus wrestles with the silence, the gods begin to talk soft whispers, at first hesitant. Apollo, who's usually the first to break an awkward silence, clears his throat. "Maybe we should look for her," he offers, though his words are tentative, as if he too is uncertain of the right course of action. But no one makes a move to follow. It's Hestia who speaks next, her voice soft but steady, and in that voice there's a strange calm that seems to resonate with the gods. She needs time, she suggests gently, her hands clasped around her sacred flame. Hera is not a woman to chase. She is a force. Let her be. Hestia's wisdom is well known across Olympus, and her words seem to settle like warm embers into the hearts of the others. The room falls into a deeper silence, the kind that suggests more is happening than anyone can articulate. It's not a mere quiet, it's the pause before something huge, something transformative. Hera's absence isn't just a momentary disruption. It feels like the calm before a storm, but one that's so subtle you don't realize it's happening until it's already too late. And then, in the back of your mind, a question bubbles up. What exactly is Hera planning? She's not a goddess known for grand, noisy gestures. Her revenge has never been about grandstanding. No, Hera's power is in the quiet moments, the private silences, and the careful weaving of her strategy. What she does next will be quiet, but that's precisely what makes it dangerous. Zeus may be distracted with his own insecurities, but Hera, she is always a step ahead. Historians still wonder if Hera had truly lost faith in her marriage to Zeus by now. Was this just one more small offense, or had it been the last straw? No one can say for sure, but her behavior and the silent void she has left behind is telling. Meanwhile, Zeus can only stew in his discomfort, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. He goes through the motions, chatting with the others, but his eyes are always searching, always looking for Hera. He finally rises from his seat, pacing across the room, rubbing his temples. Even the mighty thunder god doesn't know what to do when the thunder clouds are silent. And then, after what feels like hours, but is likely mere minutes, Hera's voice rings out. Soft, measured, but unmistakably her own. It cuts through the stillness as though a crack in the fabric of Olympus itself has just been made. "I am here," she says, and that's all. The gods freeze. You realize that Hera has not gone far. She has simply retreated to a place where her presence is felt, but not seen. It's a subtle move, but it carries immense power. She is not running away. She is merely watching, waiting for the moment when the gods realize that they need her more than they think. For now, Zeus can only swallow his pride and wait. There's no thunderstorm to save him, no flashing lightning to cut through the quiet. All he has now is the growing tension and the uncomfortable silence that stretches between them. Time passes, though it's impossible to tell exactly how much. The gods linger in the silence, each one more hesitant than the last. The usual sounds of Olympus, the quiet laughter, the clinking of goblets, the soft shuffle of sandals on marble floors, all these noises have evaporated. It's as if the entire mountaintop, this citadel of gods and immortals, has fallen under the weight of Hera's unspoken words. Her absence feels like an echo reverberating in the hearts of all who are left behind. Zeus, now sitting back down, fidgets restlessly in his chair. His golden eyes dart around the room looking for an out something to regain the energy of the hall, but nothing happens. It's almost as if Hera's silence has altered the very fabric of their interactions. No one dares break it. Apollo shifts nervously, looking anywhere but directly at Zeus, while Hestia maintains her calm, watching the proceedings with quiet interest. The moment she spoke earlier, "Let her be," seems to carry more weight than anyone could have anticipated. And then it happens. A subtle shift. It's not a grand gesture, but something in the air changes. From the far corner of the room, the faintest sound rises like a whisper, caught on the breeze. You strain to hear it, and at first you wonder if your ears are deceiving you. But then it comes again, a delicate rustling of cloth, the faintest murmur. Hera's voice. "I did not leave because of you," she says softly, her voice like the caress of the wind, yet tinged with a rawness that only a goddess scorned could know. "I left because I was never meant to be your captive. Not in this marriage, not in this arrangement." There's a deep, aching honesty in her words, a truth that no one, not even Zeus, had ever expected her to express aloud. And yet here it is, laid bare for all to hear. Zeus still hasn't turned his gaze toward her. He's been holding his breath, waiting for the moment when Hera might reveal the next part of her plan, her next move, her next statement. He knows it's coming, but he cannot prepare himself for it. The moment she speaks, it's like the silence breaks in a single breath. "You are the god of thunder, my love." She continues her words, measured and almost unbearably calm. "But your roar is no longer enough to silence me." There is a pause, only a heartbeat, but it feels like a century. And then Hera steps back into the room. She's not rushing, not charging with all the rage one might expect. No, Hera enters like a queen reclaiming her throne, slow and deliberate, each step filled with purpose. Her eyes meet Zeus's for the first time since she left, and there is no anger there, only a quiet, sovereign resolve. Zeus looks at her, and for the first time in perhaps centuries, he feels small. He doesn't speak, doesn't dare to. He simply watches as Hera reclaims her space, her power. The other gods shift nervously, unsure of where this is going. There is no shouting, no dramatic gestures of defiance. Hera's power lies in her restraint, in the way she manages to take control without lifting a finger in anger. It's all in the quiet. Historians still debate whether Hera's silence, her subtlety, was a deliberate choice to make Zeus feel powerless, or if it was simply her way of expressing the weariness of a long, complicated relationship. In many ways, Hera's power has always been in the spaces between her words. The gods themselves know this. Some of them may even envy it. Zeus's own power, though formidable, is often wrapped up in outward displays. His thunderbolts, his booming voice, his ability to command attention through force. But Hera, she doesn't need to shout. She simply exists in a way that demands respect. But Hera's not done. She continues, and this time her voice is softer, almost soothing in its quiet authority. "I was always your equal, Zeus. I never needed your approval. I've given you everything, and in return, you've given me nothing but the chaos of your desires. So I leave not as a scorned wife, but as a woman who has finally understood that her worth is not tied to your whims." It's almost as if in these few sentences, Hera has said more than she's ever allowed herself to say before. The gods are speechless, and Zeus is rooted to his seat. The room is still, save for the faint rustle of Hera's gown, as she moves past the throne, reclaiming her space not by force, but by sheer, undeniable presence. The change is palpable. You can almost feel the shift in the air, like the quiet before a storm breaks. Hera has reasserted herself, but not through violence or anger. No, her victory lies in the way she's made the gods confront their own assumptions about power. They all know now that Hera cannot be dismissed. Not now, not ever again. Zeus, his ego bruised but not broken, finally stands. The air between him and Hera is thick with unresolved tension, but there's something different about it now. It's not just the tension of an argument. This is the tension of two beings, two equals finally confronting their shared history. For the first time in a long while, Zeus does not feel like the king of the gods. Hera's quiet fury has upended everything he thought he knew about her and about himself. The gods watch, waiting for what will happen next. Will Hera and Zeus finally find a way to coexist in this strange, tumultuous marriage, or has something irreparable shifted between them? The answer remains unclear, but one thing is certain. The world of Olympus will never be the same again. The silence in the room grows thicker, almost suffocating. There's no dramatic crash of thunder, no massive show of emotion. Instead, there's only the subtle shift in the energy around Hera and Zeus, two beings of immense power standing in the same space, yet miles apart in their understanding of one another. The gods, once so eager to watch this conflict unfold, now seem uncertain of what to do. Some lower their eyes, unsure whether they're witnessing a monumental change or simply another episode in the long history of Olympus's messy, godly relationships. Zeus stands tall, but there's a weariness in his stance, a quiet surrender in the way he gazes at Hera. His thunderbolt, that ultimate symbol of his dominance, seems so far away now. For the first time, it's not the object of supreme power. It's merely a tool, one that he doesn't quite know how to wield in this situation. Hera, on the other hand, seems almost unbothered by his presence, standing with a quiet dignity that speaks volumes more than any of her thunderous outbursts ever could. The tension between them isn't just emotional, it's cosmic. You could feel it in the way the stars themselves might have dimmed slightly, the way the winds seem to pause, waiting. There's a feeling that something fundamental is shifting, something that can't be undone once it's set in motion. But Hera isn't angry anymore. If anything, there's a kind of exhausted calm in her eyes. She's no longer trying to prove anything to Zeus or to anyone else. She has always known who she is, even if the gods around her haven't always seen it. And now she's simply allowing that truth to settle like an ancient, heavy stone finally sinking into the earth after being tossed about for centuries. Do you ever listen to yourself? Hera's voice rings out low and measured. She doesn't raise it in anger. There's no need. The question hangs in the air, quiet but cutting, like a thread being pulled taut. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Zeus. I'm asking you to hear me when I speak, to not drown me out with your thunder or your proclamations. She lets her words hang in the air between them, heavy with the weight of truth. Zeus flinches just slightly. He doesn't respond right away. Instead, he looks down at the floor as though searching for the right words. But they don't come. Hera has always been the heart of their relationship, his equal, his match. She's been by his side for eons, bearing witness to his triumphs and his mistakes, and yet for so long he's failed to listen. Maybe he thought he didn't need to. Or perhaps he believed that his dominance over the heavens meant his words should be the last. But now, faced with Hera's calm resolve, he's realizing how little he's actually listened to her over the centuries. The gods around them remain still, afraid to break the silence. Ares, typically the one to jump into a verbal joust, stays quiet. Even Aphrodite, who can't help but make a comment on almost anything, holds her tongue. No one wants to risk escalating the situation further. For the first time in a long while, Hera's presence alone seems to command respect. Historians have often debated whether Hera's own frustration with Zeus stemmed from a desire for more power, or if it was simply the toll of endless submission. Was it the endless echoes of his thunder that drowned her out? Or was it the suffocating weight of being defined only by her relationship to him? Many believe it was a combination of both. Hera was a goddess of immense wisdom and authority, not simply the wife of Zeus. And yet the gods for so long seemed to ignore that fact. Perhaps the tension between them was inevitable, and what we're witnessing now is the final unraveling of centuries of misunderstanding. But Hera's not interested in explaining herself anymore. She said her piece, and now she simply stands waiting. The power of her silence is enough. The other gods may still look to Zeus for guidance, but Hera is no longer one to be sidelined. She's not playing by anyone else's rules anymore. For the first time in a long time, the gods of Olympus are uncertain of what will happen next. Will Zeus finally recognize the depth of Hera's strength, or will this mark the beginning of a slow unraveling of their union? A quiet, powerful shift in the very structure of Olympus itself. The air between them crackles, but there's no lightning, no thunder. The storm that Hera has set in motion is one of stillness, and the gods can feel it. They know that Hera, for all her silence, is more powerful than any of them could have imagined. As Zeus continues to stand there, his gaze never leaving Hera's face, you might wonder what's running through his mind. He has known power all his life. He has been the one to command the skies, to control the weather, to summon storms at his will. But this is different. This is a kind of power that doesn't need to shout. Hera's silence is far more formidable than any thunderbolt he could ever unleash. And in the stillness of that room, the gods of Olympus come to a realization. Hera's tantrum, though quiet, has shifted the very foundation of their existence. It is a moment of reckoning, a moment where all of Olympus must confront the fact that Hera is no longer content to be a passive participant in her marriage. No longer will she accept the status quo. This is her stand, and it's been long overdue. The tension lingers the room heavy with unspoken words. Hera stands in the center, poised and unyielding, while Zeus remains rooted to the ground, his gaze locked on her. The gods around them seem to shift uneasily, but no one dares to speak, not even in the hushed whispers of the usual Olympus gossip. Everyone is too aware of the weight of what has just transpired. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, Hera's quiet power seems to have won the day. Zeus is no longer the unquestioned ruler of Olympus. His throne still stands tall, adorned with glimmering gold and endless symbols of his divine authority. But for the first time, he seems acutely aware that Hera, too, has the right to sit upon it. Her power is not one that requires a crown, nor does it demand an audience. She has always been the force that shaped Olympus from behind the scenes, the one who steadied the heavens when storms raged. And now with a quiet step she has made it clear that she will no longer accept a passive role in this grand drama. There's no shout of rebellion, no wild outbursts, only a calm realization that perhaps for the first time she can control her own fate. Hera isn't simply upset or throwing a tantrum. She's reclaiming herself, and that shift is a power all its own. Zeus seems to sense this, a flicker of acknowledgement crossing his face. There is no thunder in his gaze now, no fire. Instead, there's a moment of vulnerability, an awareness that for all his might, there are forces in the world that are simply beyond his control. Hera's presence is one such force, and Zeus is beginning to grasp that he cannot command it. He cannot dominate the stillness that radiates from her. And perhaps, for the first time, he begins to wonder if he ever should have. Do you understand now? Hera's voice is low, almost soft, but it carries the weight of centuries of frustration, years of being diminished. There's no hint of anger in her words, just a quiet assertion. She's not asking Zeus for an apology, not asking for his approval. She's merely stating the truth that has been buried beneath layers of godly drama and Olympus's politics for far too long. Zeus doesn't answer right away, his lips pressing into a thin line. He's searching for words, anything to ease the growing tension, to diffuse the weight of Hera's presence in the room. He knows that this moment cannot be ignored, cannot be wished away with a thunderclap or a show of force. This is something different, something deeper than mere divine rivalry. Hera is no longer the woman standing quietly behind his throne, patiently enduring. She is standing beside him, equal to him, in a way she has never been before. Perhaps he finally murmurs the words, coming slowly like the first drops of rain before a storm. Perhaps I have not listened. Perhaps I have been too blinded by my own power. There is no fanfare, no grand apology, just the quiet admission of a truth that Zeus is only now willing to face. The words carry a weight, but it's not the heavy weight of thunder, it's the weight of understanding, of recognition. Hera looks at him, her gaze unwavering. She doesn't respond immediately, letting the moment linger between them. In truth, she doesn't need to. The silence that follows is enough. Zeus has acknowledged her power, her voice, and that is all she's ever really wanted. Not to be treated as the lesser half of a divine partnership, but to be seen as a sovereign in her own right, a force of nature whose contributions are not mere footnotes in Zeus's grand story. Around them, the other gods still remain silent, unsure of how to proceed. But something has changed. This is not just an argument between husband and wife. This is a reckoning, one that will echo throughout Olympus for generations to come. The gods have witnessed something profound tonight, not a battle of wills, but a shift in the very fabric of divine power. The dynamic between Hera and Zeus has changed irrevocably, and with it the entire atmosphere of Olympus. Some of the gods may not understand what has happened or why it matters, but they know that things will never be the same. The moment Hera spoke her truth, the old power structures of Olympus began to crumble, just a little. Zeus is still king of the gods, still the wielder of thunder and lightning. But now Hera stands as his equal, and whether he realizes it or not, that has made all the difference. Historians still debate the importance of Hera's silence, whether it was a sign of her hidden power or a reflection of her frustration with being overshadowed by Zeus. But one thing is certain: Hera's quiet rebellion was not a tantrum. It was a declaration. She wasn't asking for change, she was demanding it. And now, with the gods witnessing this quiet revolution, no one can pretend it didn't happen. Hera and Zeus stand in the same space no longer, the same as they were before. For the first time, their union feels less like a partnership and more like a shared space, both gods, both forces, both undeniable powers. There will be no returning to the old ways, to the old balance. Something has shifted between them, and even the gods who have seen millennia of drama unfold on Olympus, know that they have just witnessed the birth of a new order. The question now isn't whether Hera will forgive Zeus for his mistakes, but whether they can both find a way to coexist in a world where their powers are no longer defined by their roles, but by their mutual respect for one another. As the stillness lingers in the air, the gods of Olympus begin to stir, uncertain of what comes next. Some try to meet Zeus's gaze, but none of them dare to speak, as though afraid to break the fragile silence between Hera and her husband. Even Ares, whose impulsive nature usually keeps him from thinking too deeply, stands motionless, watching with wide eyes. The quiet is unnerving in a way none of them expected. It feels heavy, like the calm before the storm. But instead of thunder, there's an eerie stillness that spreads across the room. Hera, ever composed, doesn't allow the moment to drag on too long. She's said her piece. She's made her point, and there's no need to push further. As powerful as her silence may be, it's not for show, it's simply a reflection of her own clarity. She's not here to argue. She's here to remind Zeus that she too has her own strength. And that strength is just as real, just as tangible as his own. With a slow exhale, Hera turns from Zeus, the soft rustle of her gown the only sound in the room. She steps forward, her back still straight, her head held high. The gods around her watch, and some, like Athena, might even feel a quiet admiration stir. Athena, who has always understood the subtleties of power, sees the significance of this moment in a way the others don't. Hera is not backing down. She's moving forward. She's asserting herself without needing to prove anything to anyone, least of all Zeus. The room seems to hold its breath as if waiting for something monumental to happen, for Hera to speak again, for Zeus to lash out in frustration, for something. But instead, Hera walks toward the balcony, her pace measured, and the gods, one by one, realize that she's not expecting an apology from Zeus. She's not even waiting for his reaction. She's simply reclaiming her space, the space she's always had, but that had been ignored by many. Historians, in their various analyses of Hera's role in Greek mythology, still argue over what exactly this moment meant. Some view it as the apex of Hera's quiet strength, her ultimate moment of independence from Zeus's shadow. Others, though, suggest it was less about empowerment and more about self-preservation. Could Hera have been weary, exhausted by centuries of being expected to silently support Zeus? Could this have been less about rebellion and more about her refusal to be drowned out any longer? Whatever the reason, the quiet revolution has begun, and the ripples of it will soon be felt throughout Olympus. Hera may not have shouted her fury or thrown objects in dramatic tantrums, but what she has done is far more subtle and much more dangerous. She has asserted her quiet dominance. The gods, still frozen in their uneasy positions, begin to whisper among themselves. They can sense the shift, but they can't quite put words to it. Even the ever-confident Hermes, who usually prided himself on his wit, remains silent, as though uncertain of his place in this new order. This, after all, is not something he can smooth over with charm or clever words. Hera has drawn a line in the sand. She has shown them all that she is not just the goddess of marriage, but of power in her own right. Ares finally finds his voice, though it's a hesitant one. Is this it then? Have we all been reduced to mere spectators? His question is sharp, but it's also tinged with uncertainty. Perhaps even he is beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. Hera doesn't turn to face him, but her voice, calm as always, responds clearly. No, we're not spectators. We're participants in a world that is constantly changing. There's no bitterness in her words, just a steady truth. If you are not willing to change with it, Aries, then perhaps you will be left behind. Aries recoils, not expecting such a blunt reply. It's not the response he was anticipating from the goddess of marriage, the one who had always been seen as the quieter, steadier counterpart to Zeus's thunderous fury. Hera's words hang in the air like a delicate breeze, light, but carrying an undeniable force. The gods exchange uneasy glances, each of them feeling the subtle weight of Hera's assertion. The gods of Olympus, it seems, are in the midst of a reawakening, a shift in the very balance of power that has held sway for so long. Zeus's thunder no longer seems as certain in the face of Hera's quiet wisdom. She isn't challenging him with open defiance. She's simply demonstrating that she doesn't need to. Her power, it seems, speaks for itself. Zeus watches her from the shadows, his own gaze thoughtful. It's clear that something has shifted within him. Hera's quiet strength has pierced through the layers of his own pride, and now he must face the reality of their partnership, not as ruler and subordinate, but as two equals. This is not the story of a king and his queen. This is a story of two gods, each with their own strengths, each with their own role to play. And so the gods of Olympus wait, watching, feeling, knowing that this moment will echo for centuries. Hera has thrown her quiet tantrum, and it has left them all with more questions than answers. What will the future of Olympus look like now, with both Zeus and Hera standing as equals? What new order will rise from this subtle yet powerful shift? As the night stretches on and the stars shimmer overhead, the gods know that they've witnessed something monumental. Hera's quiet rebellion has set the stage for a new era. But whether it will be one of harmony or discord remains to be seen. The whispers of change that had started in Hera's quiet assertion now begin to ripple through the halls of Olympus. The gods who had watched in stunned silence now find themselves at a crossroads. There's a subtle but undeniable shift in the air, a feeling that things may never return to how they once were. Hera's quiet defiance has done what no amount of thunder or celestial force could. It has made the gods question the very nature of power on Olympus. The gods have always been creatures of tradition, held by invisible yet unyielding chains of hierarchy and age-old customs. Zeus, the eldest and the most powerful, had long been seen as the undisputed king, while Hera, his consort, played the part of the dutiful queen. But Hera's actions tonight have disrupted that rigid structure. She has shown them that power does not always need to roar to be felt. Sometimes it is the calmest movements that create the greatest shifts. And those shifts, like the subtle movement of the tides, will not be so easily reversed. The gods who had once quietly accepted their places under Zeus's rule now begin to ponder, could this new, quieter power be more enduring, more balanced? What would Olympus look like if the gods no longer bowed solely to the will of one mighty ruler, but instead balanced their power with one another in a more equitable way? Ares, whose pride is bruised by Hera's words, begins to stir. While he may not fully understand the implications of Hera's stance, he feels the discomfort it has caused. For the first time, Ares realizes that his usual brashness may not be enough to win favor in a world where power is no longer just about loud force, but about quiet resolve. His mind races, filled with questions, uncertainty, and perhaps even a hint of fear. Could this be the dawn of a new age where even he, the god of war, would have to play a different role? Meanwhile, Athena, who has always prided herself on wisdom and strategy, watches this unfolding drama with keen interest. She's seen many shifts in Olympus's power dynamics before, but this feels different. Hera's quiet rebellion has given the gods something new to consider. Power is no longer only about strength or control. It's about presence, about quiet authority. Athena can't help but respect the subtlety of what Hera has done. After all, isn't it the quiet, steady hand that guides a ship through the storm? Not the loudest voice on deck. But not everyone is so ready to embrace change. Hermes, always the trickster, tries to diffuse the tension with his usual charm, attempting to crack a joke about how the divine court might need a refresher course on relationships. But his humor falls flat. Even he, the messenger of the gods, can sense the weight in the air, and there's no easy way to diffuse it. This is not a joke to be laughed off. This is history in the making. The gods of Olympus can feel the subtle shift in the balance of power, and it's not one that can be shrugged away. For his part, Zeus, who has always seen himself as the ultimate arbiter of the divine order, is left to wrestle with his own thoughts. He's not used to feeling this way, unsteady, uncertain, vulnerable. Hera's words have forced him to confront something he had long buried, that despite his strength, his might, and his authority, he's not invincible. There are forces on Olympus more powerful than his thunderbolt. And perhaps, just perhaps, his wife, whom he had so often dismissed or overlooked, was one of those forces. The question that hangs in the air is not just about whether Zeus will change, but whether Hera's quiet rebellion will inspire a larger shift in the way the gods conduct themselves. Will this silent protest spark a revolution of thought? A realization that the gods need not adhere to the rigid hierarchies of old? Or will it merely be a passing moment, a brief flicker in the divine tapestry that will fade as quickly as it appeared? Historians, forever eager to analyze the actions of gods and mortals alike, still debate the long-term impact of this moment. Some argue that Hera's silent rebellion marked the beginning of a new era, one where the gods would be forced to reckon with their own shortcomings, to acknowledge the validity of power in all its forms. Others maintain that it was merely a brief period of tension, a blip in the grand scheme of Olympus's history. Still others contend that this quiet moment of defiance is in its own way the most powerful shift in the history of Olympus. By saying so little, Hera had said everything. And it is in this silence, in this space between words, that the true nature of power is revealed. Zeus, the great thunderer, has been humbled not by a force stronger than his, but by a force just as strong and far more subtle. Hera's quiet tantrum, as it has come to be called, may have been small in outward gestures, but its impact will echo for ages to come. As Hera steps away from the balcony, her figure framed by the soft glow of the divine lights, there is no final dramatic gesture, no return of Zeus's thunder. Instead, she simply exits the room, her presence still lingering in the air long after she's gone. The gods who once might have feared her now understand that her strength is not something to be ignored. It is something to be respected. And so the gods of Olympus are left to ponder the implications of the events that have just transpired. The future of their realm, once so certain, now feels uncertain. The rules have changed. Power, once again, has shifted. The stillness in the air lasts longer than anyone expected. The gods sit in quiet contemplation, the weight of Hera's quiet rebellion, settling into their minds like a long-forgotten song, slowly coming into focus. Time seems to stretch out in the aftermath as though the balance of Olympus is waiting for the inevitable next move, though none of the gods can predict what that will be. Zeus, once a figure of unshakable power, is caught in a rare moment of introspection. His thunderbolts feel a little less menacing, his gaze a little less commanding. There's no immediate reaction from him, no flash of divine wrath. It's as though Hera's silence has turned his own power inward, and he's now caught in the strange quiet of self-reflection. His brow furrows as he thinks back to the countless times he's seen his reign unquestioned until now. The other gods watch him cautiously, some with apprehension, others with curiosity, and still others with a growing sense of awe. This is a moment none of them expected, least of all from Hera. The Queen of Olympus, often perceived as dutiful, controlled, and secondary to Zeus's force, has done something unexpected. She has shown them a side of power that is not just about loud gestures or commanding dominance. It is about presence control and subtlety. Ares, still trying to come to terms with what's transpired, steps forward. His voice, typically bold and loud, sounds almost tentative now. What happens now, he asks, his tone softer than it has ever been. It's not the question of a brash warrior, but of someone looking for direction. The gods wait for Zeus's response, as if expecting him to reassure them that things will return to normal. But Zeus, for all his power, remains silent. Hera's defiance has cracked something in Olympus. It's not just about the relationship between husband and wife. It's about the way power is understood in a world where gods rule, where hierarchy is so deeply entrenched that it's often invisible. Hera's quiet stand has exposed that, and it's not something that can easily be ignored. Athena, as always, is thinking 2 steps ahead. She knows this is a pivotal moment, one that will alter the course of Olympus's future. Athena has long understood that true power does not always lie in brute strength, but in intelligence and strategy. Perhaps this subtle challenge from Hera is more than just a personal protest. It's a statement about the very nature of leadership. Athena wonders if this could be the beginning of a new order, where leadership is no longer solely in the hands of one god, but shared, balanced, and thought out. For Hermes the trickster, there's no room for humor now. He's used to being able to navigate through situations with wit and charm, but the tension in the room is too thick to cut with a joke. He, too, is waiting for Zeus to speak. The room feels like a gathering storm, but no one can predict which way the winds will blow. The gods, for the first time in what feels like centuries, are unsure of what comes next. The gods, as immortal beings, have experienced countless cycles of reign and rebellion, of conflict and reconciliation. Yet this moment is unlike any other. Hera's quiet rebellion has struck a chord with all of them, each in different ways. Even Apollo, usually so serene, seems unusually subdued. He's never been one for conflict, preferring the gentle rhythms of the world, but even he cannot deny the impact of what has just occurred. Hera has reminded them all that even in a world where gods rule, there is room for change. Historians, forever fascinated by the dynamics of Olympus, still debate whether this moment marked the beginning of true equality on Mount Olympus. Some suggest that Hera's actions sparked a wave of reflection among the gods, one that would eventually lead to a more collaborative and less hierarchical Olympus. Others argue that Zeus's leadership would remain unchallenged. After all, he still held the ultimate power of the skies. But what none of them could deny is that Hera's quiet rebellion had at the very least started a conversation. The question now was whether the gods would continue to ignore the changes in the air or if they would embrace them. And then, after what feels like an eternity, Zeus finally speaks. His voice is quieter than usual, lacking the usual thunder that once accompanied his every word. Perhaps he begins his words slow-measured. I have been too quick to assume that I know what is best for all of us. Perhaps it is time to reconsider how we govern Olympus. There is no immediate resolution, no grand proclamation, but the shift is undeniable. The seeds of change have been planted, and for the first time, the gods of Olympus begin to imagine a future where they are not simply subjects under Zeus's rule, but equal partners in the governance of their world. The moment is fragile, like the stillness after a storm has passed. The gods feel it each in their own way. Some are hopeful, others uncertain, but all are aware that this moment has changed the landscape of Olympus forever. Hera's quiet rebellion has done what no sword, no thunderbolt, no mortal uprising could have done. It has started a conversation about equality, about leadership, and about the true meaning of power. And as the gods of Olympus begin to look at one another in a new light, the question remains: will they embrace the changes that Hera's quiet revolution has begun? Or will they return to the old ways, clinging to the structure that has served them for so long? Only time will tell. As the divine council lingers in the charged silence, there is a subtle shift in the dynamic. The gods, once so certain of their roles in the great dance of Olympus, now find themselves on uncertain ground. The conversation that Hera has quietly sparked continues to echo in the air, lingering like the faintest reverberation of a thunderclap, long after the storm has passed. For Zeus, this is a moment of deep reflection. His entire reign, which he has so meticulously constructed over millennia, has been based on the idea of absolute dominion. He is the king of the gods, the ruler of the heavens and earth, the father of all gods and mortals. His word has always been law. His thunderbolt has been the ultimate symbol of his power, and yet now, after Hera's subtle defiance, he is beginning to question the very foundation upon which he built that power. He looks to the gods around him, searching their faces for a sign of what they are thinking, but none offer any immediate reassurance. Some, like Athena, are deep in thought, her sharp mind turning over the implications of this new reality. Others, like Ares, appear unsettled, unsure of how this quiet act of rebellion will impact their future. Even Apollo, who typically remains calm and detached, seems to be considering the larger picture, perhaps. For the first time, his gaze is not just on the immediate situation, but on the long-term effects of Hera's actions. Zeus's voice, when it finally breaks the silence again, is softer than anyone expected. Perhaps I have misunderstood the nature of power. He admits, his tone laced with the vulnerability that he rarely allows himself to show. The gods, accustomed to his booming proclamations and unyielding authority, exchange glances, unsure of how to respond. Hera, who has been waiting patiently for Zeus's words, remains unmoved, her gaze steady, unwavering. Hera has already made her point. She does not need to make it again. Her quiet strength is in the fact that she does not need to shout to be heard. In the face of Zeus's growing uncertainty, Hera has shown the gods that power is not always about dominance or force. Sometimes power is in restraint, in the ability to hold your ground without saying a word. The gods now understand that Hera's silence has been as powerful as any roar. Athena, ever the strategist, leans forward, her mind already formulating the next move. Perhaps it is time for all of us to reconsider what it means to lead, she says, her voice calm yet undeniably authoritative. Power in its truest form does not lie in subjugation. It lies in balance, in collaboration. Her words hang in the air, resonating with truth. She more than anyone understands the importance of balance, of not only strength, but also wisdom, of not only courage, but also fairness. Ares, still nursing his bruised ego, is the first to speak up, though his tone is more cautious than usual. "So you think we should all just sit around and hold hands," he says with a small, sardonic laugh. It's a thin veil over his uncertainty, a mask he wears to hide his growing realization that Hera may be right. What's next? A divine democracy. The suggestion is jarring to some, but in the quiet after his words, there's a certain truth to them that cannot be ignored. For the first time in ages, the gods are forced to confront the question of what their roles truly are. Hera's defiance has cracked the veneer of Olympus, and now they all must decide how to move forward. Will they cling to the old ways where Zeus rules supreme, and the gods play their respective parts in a rigid hierarchy? Or will they heed Hera's unspoken challenge and embrace a new order, one where power is shared, and the gods are no longer bound by the invisible chains of tradition? Hermes, always quick with a quip, tries to lighten the mood with a joke about how this might be the perfect time for a new world order. But even his humor seems inadequate in this moment. The stakes are higher than he anticipated, and the gods are too aware of the significance of what has just transpired to let it slide by unnoticed. The tension builds and builds, yet there is no immediate resolution. Zeus is deep in thought, his mind racing as he considers the future of Olympus. The gods who have gathered around him, each with their own concerns and desires, watch with bated breath. The silence is almost unbearable now, but it is the silence of contemplation of a world about to change. And then, after a pause that feels eternal, Zeus looks at Hera. His gaze no longer one of supremacy, but one of understanding. Perhaps he begins again, his voice steady, though not as forceful as before. It is time for Olympus to evolve, for the gods to evolve. Hera's quiet rebellion has done what no divine battle, no mortal uprising could ever do. It has forced the gods to confront the very foundation of their existence. It has made them question whether they can continue living under a system that has outlived its usefulness. Whether it is possible to live in a world where power is shared, where each god is valued for their contributions rather than their position on a celestial ladder. Historians still argue over whether this was truly the turning point for Olympus, or whether the gods eventually reverted to the old ways, comfortable in their familiar hierarchy. What is undeniable, however, is that Hera's quiet act of rebellion set the stage for a conversation that had long been avoided, a conversation about the true nature of power, leadership, and equality, a conversation that would not easily fade into the background. In the end, it was not a thunderbolt or a battle cry that changed Olympus. It was silence. It was Hera's quiet rebellion that sparked a shift, and it was the gods themselves who would ultimately decide whether that shift would become a new way of being or simply another forgotten moment in the history of Olympus. As the gods of Olympus continue to sit in the aftermath of Hera's quiet challenge, the very air feels charged with potential. For the first time in an age, the future of the divine hierarchy is in question. The gods, once bound by tradition and the unspoken rules of power, are now facing the possibility that their world might no longer be the one they thought they understood. Zeus, once the unquestioned ruler, no longer speaks with the same thunderous authority. His words are carefully measured, softer than they were before, as though he is navigating a delicate situation. It's not a sign of weakness, but rather a quiet acknowledgement that something has shifted, something fundamental. He has always prided himself on being the ruler of Olympus, but Hera's rebellion has shown him that even he is not beyond reproach. The gods are watching him, waiting for a sign of what comes next. And yet, despite his introspection, Zeus is still the king. His reign, though challenged, has not been fully upended. The other gods, no matter how much they may reflect on Hera's quiet revolt, still recognize his dominance in the end. It's an awkward moment, like the uneasy pause that follows the first cracks in an ice sheet, fragile, uncertain, but undeniably present. Athena, ever the strategist, watches carefully. She knows that this moment could set the course for Olympus's future. Power, in her mind, is not just a matter of holding a position. It's about understanding the deeper currents beneath the surface, the forces that move the gods and the mortal realm alike. She sees the opening that Hera has created and wonders if it could lead to a more balanced rule, one that reflects the complexity of the gods themselves. No single god holds the entire weight of Olympus on their shoulders. Each one has something to contribute, a unique strength that could guide their world forward. But would the gods be willing to share the power they've always held so tightly? Eris, who had initially bristled at the idea of any challenge to Zeus's authority, is beginning to see things differently. He watches his father with growing unease. The king of the gods has always been a figure of strength, but now Zeus seems a little less unassailable, a little more human. There is a part of Ares that finds this unsettling. He's used to power being clear, sharp, and certain. But now it feels like it's slipping through their fingers, like sand in the wind. He's not sure if he's ready for the world to change in such an uncertain way. Yet even Ares cannot deny the truth in Athena's words. He might be the god of war, but he's also a god of strategy, and in this moment, he knows that the old ways of Olympus, brute force, and blind dominance may not be the answer anymore. Hera has shown them all a different path, one that may require subtlety, intelligence, and even collaboration. It's not the path of warriors, but it's a path that he knows could lead to something far greater than simply winning battles. And then there's Apollo, the god of light, music, and prophecy, who has always stood apart from the chaos of war and politics, is strangely quiet. He's seen the gods come and go, their schemes and alliances shifting like the changing tides. But he has never witnessed something quite like this, a rebellion that is not born of violence but of quiet strength. It's almost unsettling in its gentleness. But Apollo knows that the seeds of change have been sown, and like all things in the cosmos, change cannot be stopped once it's set in motion. The question is, where will this new path lead them? Hera's quiet rebellion has raised more than just questions about the balance of power. It has sparked a deeper philosophical conversation among the gods. If leadership is not about domination, but about cooperation, then how do they redefine their roles? Are they to be rulers, or are they to be partners in the governance of Olympus? Hera's actions have forced them to look at each other as equals for the first time in millennia, and it's a deeply unsettling experience for gods who have spent their immortal lives in positions of superiority. The quiet rebellion of the Queen of the Gods has opened the door to a conversation about leadership that no one had anticipated. Historians in the future will look back on this moment as the beginning of a new era for Olympus, an era where the gods themselves learn to share power, to collaborate, and to govern, not with force but with wisdom. But for now, the gods remain uncertain. They are in uncharted waters, and though they may have the power to shape their world, They are not sure how to proceed. Hermes, always the trickster, is the first to break the silence with a joke. "I suppose we could all just vote on it," he says with a grin, trying to lighten the mood. But the gods don't laugh. The gravity of the situation is too much. They are too aware that what Hera has done is not just an act of rebellion, it is a challenge to the very foundation of their existence. And they are not sure if they are ready to answer that challenge. In the absence of further words, the gods begin to withdraw into their own thoughts. Each of them is processing what has just happened in their own way. Some are intrigued, others apprehensive, and still others are angry at being forced to question their positions. But one thing is clear: the time of unquestioned rule by Zeus is over. Hera's rebellion has opened a door that cannot be closed, and what happens next will depend on whether the gods are ready to step through it. Historians still reflecting on the events of this moment wonder whether it was truly the first spark of Olympus's reformation, or just a fleeting change that would quickly fade. Some say that Hera's quiet rebellion was just the beginning of a larger transformation that would eventually lead to a more democratic Olympus, where gods would rule together as equals. Others believe that Zeus, with his unmatched power, would ultimately restore the old ways. What none of them could deny is that the gods were no longer the same as they had been before Hera's act of defiance. And whatever happens next will shape the destiny of Olympus for millennia to come. The stillness in the room is almost deafening as each god processes the unspoken challenge Hera has issued. It's a quiet tension that lingers in the air like an unsung melody, with no one daring to break the silence again, not just yet. But slowly, like a cloud parting to reveal a hesitant ray of sunlight, a new understanding begins to emerge. Hera's rebellion, quiet and controlled as it was, has opened a dialogue about the very nature of their divine existence. Zeus, for all his power and grandeur, finds himself in unfamiliar territory. He has spent his life ruling with thunder and lightning, commanding respect through sheer force. He is the king, the patriarch, the unquestioned ruler of gods and men alike. But Hera's quiet defiance, her refusal to engage in the loud and violent struggles of Olympus, has left him grappling with a new truth. True leadership may not be about domination. It may be about trust, collaboration, and perhaps even humility. And this realization stings. For Zeus, the king who has stood at the pinnacle of power for eons, this is a moment of reckoning. How many years has he spent striking down those who defied him, building his empire of dominance brick by brick? But now, as he watches Hera, his wife, his partner, and the queen of Olympus remain steadfast in her silence, something shifts within him. Could it be that he has been wrong all along? Could it be that Hera's calm strength holds a power he has never truly understood? It's not that Zeus is weak. No, he still holds the might of 1,000 storms in his grasp. But this moment, this quiet revolution sparked by Hera's refusal to speak, has cracked open a door that Zeus cannot simply close. He finds himself wondering if this is the beginning of something bigger, a new era, perhaps where power isn't about who shouts the loudest or who strikes first, but about who can navigate the complexities of leadership with wisdom, with patience, and with respect for the others who share the same sky. And then there's Athena, ever the keen observer, who sees the shift in Zeus's demeanor and understands its significance. Athena has always been a thinker, a strategist. She's seen power struggles before, from the Olympian wars to the great battles fought on Earth. but she's never seen anything quite like this. The gods, as ancient as they are, have always adhered to a set of rules, a hierarchy that has been in place for millennia. But Hera has shaken that foundation. And now Athena can't help but wonder if it's time for a new kind of rule, one based not on strength, but on unity. Athena's mind races with possibilities. What would an Olympus look like if the gods shared their power equally? Would it be more peaceful, more just, or would it descend into chaos? Could they even function without the traditional hierarchy? She doesn't know yet, but she's certain of one thing. Hera's quiet rebellion has presented a unique opportunity for change, and Athena, ever the strategist, is eager to explore what that might mean. Ares, still standing in the background, is far from convinced. He has always viewed the gods' roles in stark terms. War, battle, and dominance are simple, clear-cut concepts. But this new idea of shared leadership, that's a different world entirely. Ares has spent centuries fighting, training, and proving his worth through strength. The idea of giving up any part of his power, of sharing it with the others, feels alien to him. And yet, even Ares cannot ignore the truth in what Hera has done. Perhaps he thinks there's more to power than just bloodshed and victory. Perhaps the strength he has always relied on can be supplemented with something deeper, something that Hera, in her quiet defiance, has shown them all. But Ares isn't the only one struggling with this shift. Apollo, who has always been the epitome of grace and light, stands apart from the chaos of war and rule. He has observed the divine realm with a calm detachment, often serving as a bridge between the gods and the mortals. Yet even Apollo is caught off guard by this turn of events. Hera, who once seemed to play her role with the quiet dignity of a queen, has now positioned herself as a true force of change. The gods, he realizes, have been living in a world defined by the loudest, most forceful voices. Hera's subtle rebellion, though quiet, has proven that true leadership can come from gentleness, from introspection, from restraint. For Apollo, this is a moment of reflection. He has always believed in balance, the balance between light and dark, between music and silence, between prophecy and free will. And now, as the gods stand at the precipice of a new future, he wonders if balance might be the key to their survival as a divine family. If they can learn to share their power, to collaborate rather than dominate, maybe Olympus can find harmony once again. Perhaps in this new world the gods can learn to lead together rather than apart. As the gods each retreat into their thoughts, the atmosphere in Olympus shifts. The tension is still there, but it's no longer a tense silence of battle. It's a silence of contemplation. The gods are no longer fighting for dominance. They are searching for understanding. They are questioning the very principles that have defined their existence for millennia, and in that questioning, there is a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Hera's quiet rebellion is the catalyst for a new era, one where the gods do not simply rule, but lead with wisdom, compassion, and collaboration. The question remains, will they embrace this shift? Will they welcome the idea of shared power, of a more balanced Olympus, or will they revert to the old ways, finding comfort in the familiar structure that has sustained them for so long? Whatever path they choose, it is clear that Hera's quiet tantrum has changed the course of their history. And that change, though slow and uncertain, is something none of the gods can deny. In the days that follow Hera's quiet act of defiance, a strange calm settles over Olympus. It's not the kind of calm that comes after a storm, but the kind that arrives when the storm is yet to fully form. The gods know that something monumental has shifted in the divine order, but what exactly that change will be remains a mystery. The atmosphere is charged with anticipation, each god quietly wondering whether Hera's rebellion will lead to something more, a revolution of sorts, or perhaps a subtle reordering of power. Zeus, as the leader of Olympus, knows that he cannot ignore the events of the past few days. He has always prided himself on his ability to control the narrative, to dictate the terms of any conflict. But Hera's silence, her refusal to meet his thunder with more of her own, has forced him into a position where he must respond, not with force, but with thoughtfulness. He finds himself spending long hours alone sitting atop his thundercloud, contemplating the events that have unfolded. It's a rare moment of introspection for the king of the gods, who has always relied on his strength and dominance to maintain order. His mind races as he considers the possibilities. What if Hera's quiet act of rebellion is not a one-time event, but the beginning of a movement, one that could inspire other gods to question their own roles in Olympus? What if the old ways of power built on domination and submission are no longer relevant? Could it be that Hera, with her subtlety and quiet strength, has discovered a new kind of leadership, one that is not based on fear, but on respect? The thought is unsettling to Zeus, but it also stirs something deep inside him. Could it be that he too could change? Could he learn to lead differently without the heavy hand that has guided him for so long? In the midst of his internal struggle, Zeus receives an unexpected visitor, Athena. She approaches her father's throne with her usual calm composure, but there is an intensity in her eyes that Zeus has never seen before. Athena, as the goddess of wisdom and strategy, has always been one of Zeus's most trusted advisors. But now, in the wake of Hera's rebellion, Athena is beginning to question the very foundations of their world. "You've been thinking," Athena says softly, her voice betraying none of the tension she feels within. "I can see it in your eyes." Zeus nods, his fingers tapping nervously against the arm of his throne. "I'm not sure what to think, Athena," he admits. "Everything feels different now. Hera's actions have shaken me. I've spent so many centuries ruling with strength and force, but now I'm wondering if there's another way." Athena leans in, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. "You're asking yourself the right questions," she says. "For the first time in a long time, we all are." Hera's quiet challenge wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was a call for something more. Something that doesn't rely on power alone, but on cooperation, understanding, and trust. Zeus sighs heavily, his gaze shifting to the heavens above. "But what does that mean for us, Athena? If we stop ruling with force, what happens to our power? What happens to Olympus?" Athena places a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but firm. "It means we learn to rule differently. It means we accept that power isn't always about domination. It's about knowing when to lead and when to listen." Hera's rebellion wasn't just about her personal grievances. It was about the way we've always governed Olympus. We've ruled as individuals, each of us seeking to outshine the others. But what if we could lead together as equals? What if we shared our power instead of hoarding it? The idea lingers in the air, heavy with its potential. Zeus's mind races as he processes Athena's words. Could it be that this is the moment that will define Olympus for the future? Could he, the great Zeus, ever consider ruling with others not as a king, but as a partner? The thought is foreign to him, but it's also strangely appealing. The notion of collaboration, of shared responsibility, seems at odds with everything he has ever known. And yet the more he thinks about it, the more it begins to feel like the only path forward. But there are still obstacles, both seen and unseen. Ares, for one, would never accept such a shift in power. The god of war has always been a staunch believer in the strength of individual power. The idea of sharing that power with the other gods is not just unappealing to him, it's a direct threat to everything he believes in. Hera's rebellion might have shown Zeus the possibility of change, but it has also deepened the divisions among the gods. Some will embrace this new way of thinking, but others will resist it at all costs. Apollo, too, is caught between the old and the new. As the god of light and music, he has always existed on the periphery of Olympus's political struggles. His focus has been on beauty and truth, not on power. But now, as the gods grapple with the aftermath of Hera's rebellion, Apollo finds himself questioning his role. Should he too step forward and take an active part in reshaping Olympus, or should he remain detached, as he always has, watching from the sidelines as the world changes around him? As Zeus and Athena continue their quiet conversation, the weight of the moment grows heavier. Olympus is at a crossroads, and the gods are no longer certain of the path ahead. What happens next will depend on how they choose to navigate this new reality. Will they continue down the familiar road of dominance and subjugation, or will they embrace a new way of leadership, one that values cooperation and mutual respect? The future of Olympus and of the gods themselves hangs in the balance. For now, all they can do is wait. The quiet rebellion of Hera has set the stage for something far greater than anyone could have predicted. The gods must decide whether they will accept the challenge she has posed, or whether they will fall back into the familiar patterns of the past. Whatever they choose, one thing is certain: Olympus will never be the same again. Days pass, and the weight of Hera's silence continues to hang over Olympus like a thick fog. The gods go about their usual tasks, attending to their realms, their responsibilities, but there is a subtle shift in their interactions. The usual pomp and posturing that characterize their divine meetings seem less urgent now. In the grand halls of Olympus, there are no longer the loud, forceful arguments that once punctuated their discussions. Instead, there is a growing sense of unease. The gods are for the first time in centuries unsure of their place in the hierarchy. Zeus, despite his initial reluctance, begins to find himself spending more time in quiet reflection. He visits the fields where the mortals toil, witnessing firsthand the struggles of the people he once viewed as mere subjects. He stands not as a king, but as an observer, taking in the sights and sounds of the world he rules. It's a humbling experience, one that stirs something deep within him, a yearning for understanding, for connection. Athena, ever the thoughtful strategist, has noticed the shift in her father's demeanor. She too has been reflecting on the implications of Hera's rebellion. Athena has always been a student of wisdom, and wisdom, she knows, often comes not from answers, but from questions. And Hera's silence, her refusal to fight with force, has raised the most profound of questions. How can power be shared without dissolving into chaos? How can gods whose very essence is power learn to live in harmony without losing their identities? Athena isn't sure, but she is willing to find out. She has already begun to seek counsel from the other gods, quietly nudging them toward a future where cooperation is valued over conquest. But not all of Olympus shares this sense of possibility. Ares, the god of war, remains adamant in his belief that Hera's rebellion is nothing more than a fleeting moment of weakness. For him, power is absolute. It's about strength, not compromise. He remains fiercely loyal to the old ways, to the idea that only the strongest gods should lead. And so, as the others begin to entertain the notion of shared power, Ares stands resolutely against it, preparing for the day when he will once again prove his dominance. Ares's attitude does not go unnoticed. Apollo, ever the peacemaker, grows increasingly uncomfortable with the growing divide. He is a god of beauty and harmony, but even he cannot deny that the rift between the gods is deepening. The tension is palpable. For the first time, Apollo wonders if the unity of Olympus is a fragile illusion, one that could shatter at any moment. He contemplates stepping in, but he knows that his role as a mediator, as a being of light and music, will not be enough to heal the wounds that have opened between the gods. It is Hera herself, however, who remains the most enigmatic figure. After her quiet rebellion, she retreats into herself. She does not make grand speeches or demands. Instead, she observes, waiting to see what the other gods will do with the space she has created. She is not a queen who seeks to rule through force. She is a goddess who understands the power of patience, of timing, of letting others discover the truth for themselves. Hera knows that her rebellion has sparked something profound, but she also knows that it is not for her to decide what comes next. The other gods must find their own path. But Hera does not leave it entirely to chance. She takes small, subtle actions, gestures, that while unnoticed by most, begin to shift the atmosphere of Olympus. She begins to visit the realms of the other gods, speaking with them quietly, gently nudging them toward the idea of shared leadership. Her influence is slow, but it is powerful. She does not demand obedience. Instead, she inspires it. Hera's quiet strength, the same strength that has so often been misunderstood, is now the very thing that sets the stage for the future of Olympus. Despite her quiet approach, Hera's presence is beginning to be felt by the other gods. They are starting to realize that she is not merely the wife of Zeus, the queen who supports her husband's rule. Hera is something more, something deeper, something more complex. She is a force in her own right, a goddess whose wisdom and strength have been overshadowed for too long. Now, as the gods begin to acknowledge her influence, they find themselves questioning their own beliefs about power and leadership. But the path forward is not without its challenges. The gods are still entrenched in their old ways, and while some, like Athena and Apollo, are beginning to embrace the idea of shared leadership, others remain steadfast in their belief that Olympus must remain a kingdom ruled by one. Hera's rebellion has opened the door to a new kind of world, but the gods must decide whether they are willing to step through it. Some will, and some won't. But one thing is certain: the balance of power in Olympus is shifting, and it is no longer defined by Zeus's thunder alone. In the quiet moments when the gods reflect on the changes taking place, they begin to realize that Hera's rebellion was not an act of petty defiance. It was a wake-up call. She has reminded them all that power is not something to be hoarded, not something to be wielded for its own sake. Power is a tool, a means to an end, and that end is not personal glory, but the well-being of Olympus as a whole. It's a radical shift in thinking, one that will take time to fully embrace. But as Hera continues her quiet campaign for change, the gods begin to see that their old way of ruling may no longer be enough. The gods are at a crossroads. The choice before them is stark: continue down the path of individual rule and dominance, or embrace a new era of shared power where collaboration and mutual respect are valued above all. Whatever path they choose, Hera's quiet tantrum has already made its mark on Olympus. The winds of change are blowing, and there's no turning back. As the days pass in Olympus, the gods begin to feel the pressure of the changing tides. The air itself seems heavier, laden with the weight of potential. They all sense that something significant is unfolding, something that will alter their world forever. And though they cannot yet articulate it, the gods are beginning to question everything they have known about power leadership and their roles within Olympus. Zeus, still grappling with the quiet revolution Hera has sparked, finds himself at a crossroads. He stands on the precipice of change, torn between the comfort of the old ways and the possibility of something new. His heart, heavy with responsibility, pulls him in different directions. The notion of sharing power with the other gods, of ruling, not with force but with wisdom, stirs something within him that he cannot easily ignore. Yet despite his growing understanding of Hera's position, a lingering doubt still clings to him. Could it truly work? Zeus whispers to himself as he gazes out over the vast expanse of Olympus, his thoughts as turbulent as the thunderclouds that constantly swirl around him. Could we rule together in harmony? His mind races with possibilities. It's a radical idea, and part of him is still unsure if he's ready to give up the power he's held for so long. After all, Zeus is the king of gods. His word is law, or at least it always has been. But Hera's rebellion, her quiet challenge, has begun to erode the very foundation upon which his reign was built. Could he truly share the throne? Could he step back and let the others in, allow them to help shape Olympus's future? In his doubt, Zeus turns to his daughter Athena, who has become a quiet force behind the scenes, nudging the other gods toward this new way of thinking. She is a voice of reason, a strategist, and a thinker, qualities that her father admires deeply. Athena has never been a god of grand gestures, but her influence is undeniable. She has been working slowly but surely to bring about a more balanced and collaborative leadership structure. It is through her that the seeds of Hera's rebellion have begun to take root. Father Athena says one day, joining him atop the peak of Mount Olympus. The wind is soft, a gentle breeze that carries with it the scent of wildflowers and the cool bite of the sea. You're lost in thought again. Zeus glances at her, his brow furrowed. I don't know what to think anymore, Athena. I always believed in strength, the strength to rule, the strength to control. But Hera's actions, they've shaken me. I'm not sure what to do with these feelings of doubt. Athena steps closer, her voice calm and measured. It's natural, Father. The gods have ruled with force for centuries, but it's not the only way. You've always known that deep down. Zeus looks at her, his gaze intense. But sharing power with the others, what does that even look like? Could it work? Athena smiles gently. It's not about abandoning your strength, Father. It's about using it in a different way. You've always been the king, but leadership doesn't have to be about domination. It can be about collaboration. Trust, respect, and understanding these things are just as powerful as force. Hera's rebellion wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a call for us to rethink how we lead. Zeus takes a deep breath, his mind swirling with the possibilities. Could it be that Athena is right? Could there be a way for Olympus to flourish without the weight of a single ruler, without the constant struggle for supremacy? The thought is both liberating and terrifying. For so long he has ruled Olympus with an iron fist, his thunderbolts a symbol of his absolute power. But now, Hera's quiet act of rebellion has forced him to confront a reality he never thought possible. Meanwhile, Hera remains steadfast in her silence, content to watch from the sidelines as the other gods grapple with their newfound awareness. She is not one for grand speeches or acts of bravado. Instead, she trusts that the seeds she has planted will grow in their own time. Hera knows that change is a slow process, one that cannot be rushed. She also knows that the gods are stubborn and that it will take time for them to fully embrace the idea of shared power. But she is patient. After all, she has waited centuries for this moment, and she is willing to wait a little longer. Hera's influence, though quiet, continues to spread. She has already begun to quietly visit the realms of the other gods, offering them subtle encouragement and guidance. She speaks of unity, of collaboration, of a world where power is shared rather than hoarded. It is a message that resonates with some, but others, like Ares, remain firmly opposed to such an idea. For Ares, the idea of sharing power is anathema to everything he believes in. He is a god of war, and war is about strength, not compromise. Ares believes that the gods must continue to rule as they always have, with dominance and force. To him, the notion of shared leadership is weak and insult to the gods' true power. The divide between the gods deepens. Some, like Athena and Apollo, begin to see the wisdom in Hera's vision. Others, like Ares, cling to the old ways, refusing to entertain the possibility of change. Zeus, caught in the middle, struggles to find his place in this new world order. He has always been the king, but the idea of sharing that power, of relinquishing control, fills him with unease. As the gods debate and deliberate, the future of Olympus remains uncertain. The balance of power is shifting, but it is unclear whether the gods will embrace the change or resist it. Hera's rebellion has sparked a movement, but whether that movement will lead to lasting change is still an open question. One thing is certain, however: Olympus will never be the same. The quiet rebellion of Hera has set the stage for a new era, one where the gods must decide whether they will continue to rule as individuals or come together to shape a new future. It is a choice that will define the future of the gods and their realm. And for the first time in centuries, the gods are uncertain about what comes next. The days seem to stretch on in Olympus, filled with an air of anticipation that no one quite knows how to handle. It's as though the gods are waiting for something, the next great move in a game none of them fully understand. The gods, once certain of their positions and roles, now find themselves at a crossroads. Should they continue with the ancient ways dominated by Zeus's singular rule, or should they follow Hera's quiet vision and forge a new path together? The question lingers over Olympus like the scent of rain before a storm. Zeus, however, is struggling to reconcile the weight of his past with the possibilities of the future. Despite Athena's encouragement and the mounting support from those like Apollo and even Demeter, he still feels an overwhelming pull to the way things have always been. Zeus has been the king of gods for so long that the thought of relinquishing even a fraction of that power is unsettling. He wonders with some guilt if he might be simply too stubborn to change. Could he truly reshape Olympus into something different, something shared? Or was that, in the end, just a dream? Still, despite his doubts, there's a part of him that can't ignore the seed of possibility that Hera planted within him. He recalls the silence in her eyes when she refused to engage in any further confrontations with him. It wasn't the fiery wrath he expected from his queen, the goddess's most passionate figure. It was something much deeper. Hera's silence was powerful because it spoke to the limitations of brute force. She had withdrawn not as a victim, but as a master of a new kind of strategy, passive strength. And that idea, That one wordless act, though small, had more sway over Olympus than any loud clash of thunder ever could. Yet as Zeus stands at the threshold of change, he is not the only one grappling with the implications of this new order. Athena, with her characteristic poise, continues to be the bridge between the gods. She knows that her father, though he values her counsel, is still hesitant. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and reason, understands that wisdom is not simply about knowing the right answer. It's about being able to recognize that the world is constantly changing and that one's ideas must evolve with it. Father Athena says to him once again, as they walk together beneath the stars. Her tone is patient, not demanding, but there is a quiet urgency in her voice. You don't have to do this alone. Change doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means evolving into something better, something more. Zeus looks at her still conflicted, still unsure. I don't know if I can do that, Athena. It's difficult to let go of what I've built. I've been the ruler of Olympus for so long. How can I share this power with the others? Can I trust them? Athena pauses, her gaze turning thoughtful. Trust isn't about abandoning power. It's about sharing it. You've always trusted your strength, Father, but now you need to trust the strength of others. Hera's rebellion wasn't about taking power from you. It was about inviting you to share it. Zeus sighs, looking out over the vast expanse of the heavens, feeling the weight of the moment. I know you're right, but it feels like giving up something that I've worked for, something I've fought for. And what have you truly fought for? Athena asks softly. Power, or the future of Olympus. The gods have always lived in a delicate balance, Father. Perhaps the time has come for that balance to shift. But that shift doesn't mean losing everything you hold dear. It means gaining something greater. The conversation lingers with Zeus long after Athena has departed. He knows that the path forward will not be easy. There are many who still cling to the old ways, like Ares and Hephaestus, who resist change with every fiber of their being. Ares in particular seems ready to challenge anyone who dares to question the traditional hierarchy. To him, Hera's quiet rebellion is a sign of weakness, and the idea of shared power feels like a betrayal of the gods' strength. Ares is not one for subtlety. He believes in force, in the hammer of war, and the idea that the strongest should always lead. To him, Hera's silence may have been an act of power, but it also weakened the gods' foundation. As Ares sharpens his weapons and prepares for whatever battle may come, Apollo, ever the peacemaker, continues to seek common ground. He too feels the tension growing, but unlike Ares, Apollo sees the potential for a different kind of leadership, one where harmony, not violence, takes precedence. The god of the sun, the patron of music and poetry, believes in the power of unity, and he understands that the gods, while powerful, are not infallible. They must adapt or risk being left behind. Despite Ares' opposition, Apollo begins to gather support among the more diplomatic gods. Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, is swayed by the idea of shared leadership. She understands better than most the importance of nurturing the land and its people, and she sees that a more harmonious Olympus could allow for a greater focus on the mortal realm. Similarly, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, believes that a world governed by balance and understanding would foster stronger relationships, not only between the gods, but between mortals and immortals alike. And then there is Hera, still watching from the shadows. Her silence is no longer passive. She is waiting, yes, but she is also quietly shaping the hearts and minds of the gods around her. She does not need to demand their loyalty. Her influence is growing steadily, softly, but surely. The gods are beginning to see that there is wisdom in her stillness, a wisdom that is changing the way they view themselves and each other. As the gods move closer to a decision, the tension between them continues to build. It is a battle of ideologies, a struggle between the old and the new, and at its heart lies the question of what it means to rule. Will the gods continue to live under a single dominant ruler, or will they embrace Hera's quiet vision of shared power? As the winds of change blow through Olympus, one thing is certain: the gods cannot remain in stasis forever. Hera's rebellion has opened the door, but will they walk through it? The gods of Olympus, still reeling from the unrest stirred by Hera's quiet rebellion, find themselves at a turning point. Olympus is no longer a place where all is certain, where power flows solely through Zeus's thunderous reign. The air is thick with tension, yet there is a new kind of energy in the heavens. The gods, once content to follow tradition without question, are beginning to contemplate something radical, a shift in leadership, a shift in the way Olympus has been governed for millennia. As the days pass, more and more gods begin to align themselves with Hera's vision of shared leadership. It is a subtle, almost imperceptible shift at first, but it grows louder with each passing day. Aphrodite, always one to see the power of connection, lends her voice to the cause. She speaks of love, of unity, and of the power of empathy, things that Zeus has never valued as highly as strength. Her words resonate with those who feel the burden of Olympus's rigid hierarchy, and her support acts as a subtle, persuasive force. Yet even with Aphrodite's influence, there are those who remain firmly opposed to Hera's vision. Ares, ever the warrior, believes that a shared power structure would weaken Olympus, making the gods vulnerable to outside forces. In his eyes, Hera's rebellion is a betrayal of the gods' strength, and the idea of equality is a direct threat to the warrior culture he holds dear. He believes that to rule is to dominate, and that any sign of compromise is a weakness. "I don't care what anyone says," Ares declares in one heated discussion. "The gods are not meant to share power. We are meant to lead, to fight, to be strong. If we start compromising, we risk everything. The gods are already becoming weak." Hera's quiet rebellion. It's the beginning of our downfall. His words stir a mixture of concern and defiance among the gathered gods. Some nod, agreeing that power must remain concentrated, that strength is the only thing that ensures their survival in a world of constant conflict. Others, like Apollo and Athena, shake their heads in quiet disbelief, refusing to yield to Ares's narrow view of leadership. There is more to strength than just power over others. Athena counters calmly. True strength lies in the ability to lead without forcing others into submission. Hera's vision of shared leadership is not a weakness, it is a strength. Despite Athena's measured words, Ares's voice continues to ring out like the clash of swords, a relentless reminder of the old ways. He is not the only one holding on to the past. There are many gods who fear that Hera's rebellion will bring about chaos, a breakdown of order. They worry that the gods, if they are not ruled by one strong hand, will become divided, with each god fighting for their own piece of Olympus. The debate rages on, and as it does, the gods begin to look inward, questioning their own desires, motivations, and roles within the divine hierarchy. They start to wonder, what is their true purpose? Are they meant to be tyrants or guardians, rulers, or protectors. As their individual beliefs begin to surface, it becomes clear that the gods' views on power and leadership are as diverse as their personalities. Yet in the midst of this turmoil, Hera remains silent. She watches not with anger, but with a quiet resolve. She knows that the gods cannot be forced into change. They must come to it on their own, in their own time. Her rebellion was never meant to be an immediate overthrow of Zeus. It was simply the catalyst for something greater. Hera's vision for Olympus is not one of conflict, but of growth. She sees the gods as a collective, each contributing their unique strengths and abilities. But first, they must learn to see each other as equals, not competitors. Hera knows that this process will take time, perhaps even centuries. But she also knows that it is the only way forward. The gods must learn to share power, to trust each other, and to govern, not with fear, but with wisdom and unity. It will not be easy, and it will not happen overnight. But Hera is patient, and in her silence she gives the gods the space they need to evolve. As the gods continue to debate, Zeus retreats to his private chambers, contemplating his role in all of this. He knows that change is coming, but he is still unsure of what that change will look like. Should he yield to Hera's vision and share power, or should he hold on to his throne with all his might? The decision weighs heavily on him, and as he stares out over the vast expanse of Olympus, he realizes that he is at a crossroads. No longer can he simply wield his thunderbolt and expect the gods to follow. No longer can he dictate their actions without question. The time has come for him to make a choice that will shape the future of Olympus for generations to come. In the days that follow, Zeus seeks counsel from those he trusts most. Athena, Apollo, and even Demeter, each of them offers a different perspective, but all share a common theme: the gods must evolve. They must grow beyond the rigid structures of the past, beyond the idea of one ruler and one set of rules. It is a message that resonates with Zeus, though he is still hesitant to take the final step. To share power would be to admit that he is not invincible, that he cannot control everything. But perhaps he wonders that is what true leadership is: the ability to trust others, to relinquish control for the greater good. As the days pass, Zeus begins to soften, to entertain the possibility of a new way of governing. He still clings to his old beliefs, but the weight of Hera's rebellion, combined with the growing support from the other gods, forces him to reconsider. Perhaps the gods can rule together as equals. Perhaps there is strength in unity, not division. And so in the quiet stillness of Olympus, the gods begin to change. Slowly but surely, they begin to see each other not as rivals, but as partners. Hera's quiet rebellion has not shattered Olympus. It has set it on a new course, one that will redefine the future of the gods. The question is no longer whether change will come, but how the gods will respond to it. The winds of transformation are blowing through Olympus, and the gods are beginning to feel their force. It is a moment of reckoning, a moment that will decide the future of their realm. Will they rise to the challenge of shared power, or will they cling to the old ways, doomed to repeat the same mistakes? The answer, as always, lies in their hands. As the winds of change swirl through the great halls of Olympus, a quiet, reflective moment finds its way to the gods. Time itself feels suspended, as though the passage of centuries has drawn to a close, for just a moment, allowing for something altogether new. The gods have seen countless ages rise and fall. Cities emerge from dust only to be lost to time. The mortal realm is full of such fleeting moments, empires born kingdoms crumbling into sand. And yet, in the infinite span of their existence, the gods remain distant from such trivialities. Or so they thought. For Hera, however, this was different. Her quiet rebellion had triggered something deep within the very fabric of Olympus, something that had been buried for eons, the idea of impermanence. What were the gods, if not beings, bound to a world of decay, a world where their existence could one day vanish without a trace? Her own silence, the gentle power of her absence, was an attempt to remind the gods of this truth that all things are temporary. Power, wealth, and glory can vanish as easily as they are earned. As she looks down from her celestial seat, Hera considers the mortal world below, where the shifting sands of the Sahara tell stories of lost cities, forgotten gods, and fleeting empires. There is a place far away from Olympus where the desert once cradled vibrant civilizations that now lie buried under the weight of time. The Sahara's vast expanse, once teeming with life, now stretches endlessly, a monument to the fragility of existence. Hera is aware of this irony that even the gods in their infinite power are not immune to the forces of time. It is here in the quiet of Olympus that Hera finds herself contemplating this strange paradox. Her rebellion was not a mere act of defiance. It was a gentle nudge toward an idea she had long held in her heart, that perhaps, in some way, the gods too must learn to embrace their mortality. After all, they too are part of the world they govern. Though their lives span millennia, they are not immune to the ravages of time. Their cities, their temples, their great halls, and their splendor, these too will one day fade like the lost cities of the Sahara, slipping silently into the sands of history. As she sits alone in her chamber, her thoughts turn toward the mortal world once again. She envisions the great towns of antiquity, the ones that rose up from the dust of the earth only to be swept away as if they had never existed. The ruins of once great cities, now silent and forgotten, stand as a testament to the passage of time. Perhaps in a way, these cities have more in common with the gods than anyone cares to admit. They too were once vibrant, full of life and full of hope. And yet, in the blink of an eye, they fade into nothingness. Imagine for a moment standing in the shadow of one of these forgotten cities, lost to the sands of time. The heat of the desert presses against your skin as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ruins. The wind whispers through the crumbled stone walls, carrying with it the echoes of voices long since silenced. You can almost hear the bustle of ancient marketplaces, the laughter of children, the soft murmur of scholars debating the latest discoveries. But all of it is gone now, carried away by the desert winds. In this quiet solitude, there is a profound peace. The city's once spirited existence is now a memory, a ghost of something that was but is no longer. The desert in its vastness does not mourn its losses. It simply moves forward, erasing what has been in order to make space for what will come next. This is the way of time, the endless cycle of creation and destruction. It is both an end and a beginning, a constant ebb and flow where nothing is ever truly gone, only transformed. Hera's mind drifts to the parallels between the lost cities of the Sahara and the gods themselves. In the silence of her rebellion, she is not merely waiting for the gods to evolve. She is waiting for them to understand something deeper, that their reign too is part of this great cycle. They are not immortal in the way they have imagined themselves. They are part of a world that is always changing, always moving forward. Hera knows that this shift in perspective is key to understanding what she is trying to convey. The gods have long thought of themselves as eternal, but they are part of a grand cosmic system, a system where all things, no matter how powerful, must eventually fade. It is in this recognition Hera believes that true strength lies. To embrace change, to accept that nothing is forever, is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. The gods must learn to live with the knowledge that their time, like the lost cities of the Sahara, is limited. They must use their power wisely, not as a way to dominate, but as a way to nurture and protect the world they rule. As the evening deepens, Hera allows herself a rare moment of peace. She looks out over Olympus, feeling the weight of her quiet rebellion. Perhaps the gods will never fully understand her actions. Perhaps they will never see the quiet power in accepting their own mortality. But Hera is content. She has set the stage for something greater, something that will unfold in its own time like the sands of the desert, erasing the past to make room for the future. And as you drift deeper into sleep, perhaps you too can imagine what it might have been like to walk those streets, to stand in the shadow of a once thriving city now lost to time. The Sahara's silence is not an end, it is a beginning. The story of each lost town is just another chapter in the endless book that the desert continues to write. Time marches forward, even in the silence of Hera's rebellion. The gods, after all, cannot escape the inevitable currents of change that ripple through Olympus, no matter how much they may resist. As the days pass and Hera's vision grows clearer, the gods begin to shift in subtle ways. The idea of shared power is no longer just an abstract concept whispered in the corners of Olympus. It has begun to take root in their minds. Yet as this idea blossoms, there is still much work to be done before it can truly flourish. The other gods, each in their own way, begin to grapple with the implications of what Hera has set into motion. For some, like Athena and Apollo, this transformation is both natural and necessary. They have long recognized the value of wisdom and foresight, of collaboration rather than conflict. For others, like Ares and Hermes, the shift is more unsettling. To them, the old ways of strength, cunning, and individual glory seem far safer than any newfangled notions of equality. Zeus, for his part, remains in a quiet turmoil. Though he has come to understand that Hera's rebellion was not just a personal affront, but a challenge to the very fabric of Olympus, he is torn between his pride and the growing realization that perhaps, just perhaps, he does not have all the answers. There are moments when he questions his own power, the thunderbolt he has wielded with such confidence. It is an unsettling thought, one that does not come easily to the king of the gods. But then, as always, there is Hera, the quiet, determined force who has always been the backbone of Olympus, even when her voice was unheard. It is she who now leads the charge for a new way of being. And while Zeus may feel the weight of doubt in his heart, he cannot deny the powerful example she sets. Hera's rebellion, though initially seen as a slight against him, has become a movement, one that even the most steadfast of the gods cannot ignore. Despite the deepening divide between the gods, there are small victories. Athena, with her calm wisdom, begins to gather a group of like-minded gods who understand the value of Hera's vision. They begin to meet in secret, away from the prying eyes of Ares and the more traditional gods. These meetings are not confrontational. They are quiet discussions, the kind that take place in the softest of voices. The gods who attend these meetings are united by a single purpose: to see Olympus transform, to see the gods themselves transform. As these gatherings continue, the gods begin to speak of things they have never spoken of before: compassion, trust, collaboration. They speak of ruling not with fear, but with understanding. They discuss the idea of governing as a collective, each god contributing their unique strengths, their individual talents for the greater good of Olympus. Slowly over time, the group begins to grow, with more gods coming forward to lend their voices to the cause. But not everyone is so easily swayed. Ares, ever the warrior, continues to rail against what he sees as a betrayal of their divine purpose. To him, the idea of a shared Olympus, where no single god holds absolute power, is a dangerous fantasy. It is a threat to the very foundation of their existence. Ares sees himself as the protector of Olympus, the one who keeps the gods strong, and he will stop at nothing to preserve that strength. One day, in the midst of a particularly heated argument, Ares stands before the gathered gods and declares, "If we are to be equals, if we are to share power, then who will stand to protect Olympus? Who will defend us from the mortal world and from the chaos that lurks in the shadows? If we divide our strength, we will fall. I will not let that happen." His words hang in the air, heavy and sharp. For a moment there is silence as the gods consider his words. Some, like Hermes and Poseidon, are swayed by his arguments, nodding in agreement. They too believe in strength, in dominance, in the need for a single force to control the chaos of the world. The tension between the gods deepens, and it seems that all the progress Hera has made might come undone. But then, as the gods stand on the brink of conflict, Athena rises. Calmly, she steps forward, her voice steady as a rock in the turbulent waters. "Ares, we do not seek to weaken Olympus. We seek to strengthen it, not through fear, but through unity. You are right to say that we must defend ourselves, but defense does not mean domination. We must learn to work together to stand as one. If we continue to fight each other, we will tear Olympus apart from the inside. And that, my dear brother, will be the true downfall of our home." Her words cut through the tension like a blade, and for the first time, Ares falters. His fury dims just slightly, and he looks around at the gods gathered before him. He sees not just rivals, but allies, each with a unique role to play in the protection of Olympus. Perhaps, just perhaps, Athena is right. Perhaps there is another way. And so the seeds of change continue to grow. The gods begin to realize that their strength lies not in individual glory, but in their ability to work together. Slowly, painfully, they begin to let go of their old ways, their old desires for power and control. Hera, from her quiet place, watches this transformation unfold with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Her rebellion, though soft and subtle, has sparked something in the gods that will not easily be undone. As you drift deeper into sleep, imagine the quiet stirrings of change, the subtle shift in the very fabric of Olympus. The gods who once stood apart from one another are learning to come together, to share in their strengths and weaknesses alike. The road ahead is long and uncertain, but one thing is clear: the future of Olympus will never be the same. The winds of Olympus continue to blow softly, whispering secrets of transformation and quiet rebellion. Hera's subtle but powerful actions have set the stage for a future that no one, not even the mighty gods themselves, could have foreseen. The changes she has set into motion are not grand or violent, but they are steady, like the gentle flow of a river carving through rock. Slowly, the gods begin to realize that their strength, lies not in their individual power, but in their ability to unite, to work together, to share in the burdens of their realm. As the days stretch on and the gods continue their delicate journey of self-reflection, Hera watches from the shadows, content in the knowledge that her quiet revolution is unfolding, just as she had hoped. She had not sought to overthrow the gods or disrupt the balance of Olympus. Rather, she had hoped to show them that true power lies not in control, but in understanding, compassion, and collaboration. It is a lesson that, though difficult to grasp, is beginning to take root in their hearts. Yet as the gods learn to embrace this new way of being, they are also forced to confront a truth they had long avoided: their own mortality. For so long they had considered themselves beyond the reach of time, eternal and unchanging. But Hera's rebellion has shown them that even the gods are not immune to the forces that shape the universe. Time, after all, does not care for power or glory. It moves forward, relentlessly erasing all in its path. It is a sobering realization, one that each god must come to terms with in their own way. For some, like Athena and Apollo, it is a truth they have always understood, a fact they have quietly accepted. For others, like Ares and Hermes, it is a harder lesson, one that forces them to reevaluate their place in the cosmos. And for Zeus, the king of the gods, it is perhaps the most difficult of all. As he sits upon his throne, gazing out over Olympus, he wonders how long it will be before he too fades into the annals of history. It is a thought that unsettles him, but it is also one that he cannot ignore. And so in the silence of his thoughts, Zeus begins to question the very foundation of his reign. Has he truly been the ruler he believed himself to be? Or has he simply been clinging to the illusion of power? Has he truly governed with wisdom? Or has he been driven by a desire for control? These questions, though difficult to answer, are the ones that will shape the future of Olympus. For in the end, the greatest strength of a ruler is not in their ability to command, but in their ability to let go, to allow others to share in the responsibility, to share in the power, and to trust in the collective strength of those around them. As the gods ponder these truths, Hera's quiet rebellion begins to bear fruit. The transformation of Olympus is not yet complete, but it is well underway. The gods are learning to work together to share their wisdom, their strength, and their knowledge. They are learning to see each other not as rivals, but as partners in the ongoing journey of creation and destruction, of birth and decay. And while there are still moments of tension, moments where old habits resurface, there is an undeniable sense of progress. But Hera, ever the quiet observer, knows that the road ahead will not be without its challenges. Change is never easy, especially for beings who have lived for millennia in a world of power and dominance. The gods may have begun to understand the value of collaboration, but there will always be those who resist, who cling to the old ways, who refuse to let go of the illusion of control. It is a struggle that will continue for as long as Olympus stands, but Hera is confident that the seeds of change she has planted will continue to grow even in the face of resistance. As you drift deeper into sleep, imagine the gods of Olympus not as distant, unreachable figures, but as beings learning, growing, and evolving much like us. They are not perfect and they are not invincible. They too must face the quiet rebellions of time, of mortality, and of change. Theirs is a story of transformation, of learning to let go, to trust, and to work together in the face of uncertainty. In the stillness of the night, imagine the winds of Olympus carrying whispers of this transformation. The gods are learning to embrace their own humanity, to understand that their strength lies not in control, but in their ability to come together to share and to evolve. It is a lesson that in time may echo through the ages, not just for the gods, but for all of us. And so as the final whispers of Olympus fade into the night, you too begin to feel the soft embrace of sleep wrapping around you. The gentle winds of Hera's rebellion, the quiet transformation of the gods, and the eternal dance of time all blend together, carrying you toward a peaceful rest. Now take a deep breath, let go of the world around you, and drift into the quiet, soothing embrace of sleep. The story of Hera's rebellion is one of quiet strength of transformation and of the enduring power of change. And as you rest, perhaps, you'll carry with you a small piece of that wisdom, knowing that even the gods in their quietest moments are learning to embrace the ebb and flow of time.